They say that in 1844, London society was a fortress. If you were born outside its walls, you died outside its walls. Tonight, one woman, Rosalind Ashford, dared to breach the gates. She had no title, no fortune, and no invitation. She had only a borrowed gown, the colour of a faded sky, and a spirit that refused to be broken. But she didn't know who would be watching. He was the most feared man in England, a man they called the Iron Duke, haunted by scandal and shadow. And when she entered the ballroom, a ghost in borrowed plumes, the Duke of Hawthorne could not look away. Rosalind Ashford understood the precise architecture of invisibility. It was built from the stone of averted gazes, the mortar of silence, and the polished veneer of utility. For 5 years, she had been the invisible support structure for her cousin, Lady Cordelia Vane. She was the poor relation, the orphan taken in not from charity, but from a miserly sense of obligation that demanded repayment in the currency of servitude. Her days were a litany of petty tyrannies. She laced Cordelia into corsets with fingers that ached, read French poetry aloud until her throat was raw, and bore the brunt of her aunt, Lady Vane, whose displeasure was a cold, constant draught in the Vane household on Montague Place. Tonight was different. Tonight was the event that had consumed London for a month, the Duchess of Richmond's annual ball, a spectacle of such magnificent exclusivity that invitations were rumoured to be weighed in gold. Cordelia had been vibrating with a mix of anticipation and acidic nerves for weeks. "Rosalind, where is the pearl reticule? Not that one, you idiot! The one with the Belgian lace!" Cordelia shrieked from her boudoir. Rosalind, fetching the item, moved with the quiet efficiency that was her shield. Cordelia, preening before a tall cheval glass, was a vision in swathes of apricot satin. "You are to remain here tonight," Cordelia commanded, not looking at her. "Maman has a headache and requires quiet. You will sit with her." "Yes, Cordelia," Rosalind murmured. It was no disappointment. A ball was a battlefield she had no armour for. She retreated to the servants' corridor, seeking a moment's peace. It was there that Bessie, the head lady's maid, and the only soul in the house, with warmth in her veins, intercepted her. Bessie was a woman of 60, her face a map of kindness. "She's a terror tonight, isn't she?" Bessie whispered, holding a bundle. "A real viper in satin." "She is excited, Bessie, that is all." Bessie clicked her tongue. "Excited, that's what we call it? Bah! Look, child." She unfolded the bundle. It was a dress. The silk was a delicate, watery blue, the cut simple but elegant, the sleeves capped with a whisper of lace. It was my Mary's. For her one dance, before the fever took her. Rosalind's hands flew to her mouth. "Bessie, I couldn't. It's beautiful." "It's a memory, child. And memories are meant to be lived in, not folded in lavender and tears. Lady Vane's other companion, Miss Davies, has been taken with the influenza. I heard Lady Vane complaining of it to the butler. She said she'd rather drag a stray cat than go without a girl to fetch and carry." Rosalind frowned. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting," Bessie said, her eyes twinkling, "that if Miss Davies is ill, her ladyship will need a replacement, and it is better to be a well-dressed replacement than a drab. This," she held up the gown, "is the colour of your eyes. Put it on. Now." Before Rosalind could protest, she was laced into the gown. It fit as if made for her. It was not new. The silk was not the extravagant weave of Cordelia's, but it had a grace, a dignity, that Rosalind had never felt. The summons came, just as Bessie predicted. "Miss Ashford!" Lady Vane's voice was a drill. Rosalind presented herself, her hands clasped. Lady Vane's eyes, small and sharp, raked over her. The gown was a surprise. Well, "I see the staff has ambitions," Lady Vane sneered. "Miss Davies is indisposed. You will come. You will carry Lady Cordelia's shawl and fan. You will not speak unless spoken to. You will not eat. You will not drink. You will find a potted plant and stand behind it. Is that clear?" "Yes, Lady Vane." The carriage ride to Richmond House, in Whitehall, was silent, filled only with the rustle of Cordelia's satin and the heavy scent of her jasmine perfume. Rosalind felt like a stowaway, a painted sparrow smuggled into an aviary of peacocks. They entered. The heat, the light, and the noise hit her like a physical blow. The ballroom was a galaxy of diamonds and chandeliers. The orchestra swelled, a wave of Strauss that vibrated in her chest. Hundreds of people, the absolute pinnacle of society, laughed and conversed. The air smelled of beeswax, champagne, and privilege. Rosalind instinctively shrank, moving to the edge of the vast room, her eyes wide. She found her potted plant, a truly enormous fern near a marble column. Cordelia and Lady Vane were instantly absorbed into the glittering mass, vanishing like drops of water in an ocean. Rosalind was alone, invisible as instructed. She watched, fascinated. She saw the forced smiles, the calculating glances of mothers appraising sons, the subtle hierarchies displayed in the flick of a fan or the depth of a bow. She did not know, could not know, that from the shadows of a velvet-draped alcove across the room, she was the only person being truly seen. Maximilian Thorne, the Duke of Hawthorne, despised balls. He attended them for one reason: duty. He was, at 34, the most powerful and discussed man in England. He was impossibly wealthy, controlling shipping interests, mines, and half of Mayfair. He was also, according to the gossip rags, a monster. His first wife, the beautiful Isabella, had died only 2 years prior. A tragic fall from the balcony at his country estate, Hawthorne's End. The inquest ruled it an accident. Society whispered suicide. Darker whispers hinted at something else. They said the Duke's coldness had driven her to it. They called him the Iron Duke, not for his will, but for his heart. He stood, a formidable figure in stark black evening wear, his face harsh and angular, marked by a thin white scar that ran from his left temple to his jaw, a souvenir from a duel in his youth. His eyes, the color of slate, swept the room with profound boredom. He saw the same painted faces, the same simpering debutantes being shoved in his direction. Then he saw her. She was standing by the ferns, half hidden. She was not a debutante. She lacked their brittle, eager polish. She was dressed in a simple blue gown that looked as if it had been made in another decade, yet it suited her. Her hair, a rich chestnut brown, was coiled simply, without the requisite jewels. But it was her expression. She was not trying to attract attention. She was simply watching, her gaze intelligent, analytical, and touched with a melancholy that he recognized. She fiddled with the ribbon on her glove, her brow furrowed in concentration. A practical gesture, an honest gesture. In a room built on artifice, she was the only real thing. He did not analyze the impulse, he simply acted. He stepped from the alcove and began to walk. The crowd parted for him like the Red Sea, whispers and curtsies in his wake. Rosalind was observing Lady Jersey, a notorious gossip, when a shadow fell over her. She looked up, and then up again. He was the tallest man she had ever seen, his shoulders blocking the light of the chandelier. His face was dangerous, all sharp angles and shadow, dominated by the scar and the most unnerving, assessing eyes she had ever met. She knew who he was. Everyone knew. The Duke of Hawthorne. She felt her blood run cold. She had been seen. She was in trouble. She dipped into a deep, trembling curtsy. The Duke said nothing for a long moment. He simply looked at her. The music, the chatter of the room, faded to a distant hum. "You are hiding," he stated. His voice was a low, gravelly baritone that vibrated through her. "Your Grace," she stammered, rising. I was instructed to." "By whom?" My employer, Lady Vane. I am her daughter's companion." A flicker of comprehension and distaste crossed his features. He knew of Lady Vane. "A companion? And do your instructions include refusing a dance?" Rosalind's heart stopped. "Your Grace?" "I find myself in need of a partner," he said, "who is not angling for my title or my fortune before the waltz has even concluded. You appear suitably occupied, which means you are not." He extended a gloved hand. Every eye in the ballroom was on them. She could feel the stares like needles. She could see Cordelia and Lady Vane across the room, their faces masks of pure, unadulterated shock, which was quickly curdling into rage. This was ruin. This was the end of her position, her home, everything. But his hand was still extended, and in his dark eyes she saw not a request, but a command. To refuse would be an insult so profound it would shatter the Vanes' social standing far more than her acceptance. I would be honored, Your Grace," she whispered, placing her trembling fingers in his. His grip was firm, warm. He led her onto the polished floor. The orchestra struck the first notes of a new waltz. As he placed one hand on her waist, a jolt, sharp and electric, passed through her. The Iron Duke, the feared, cold-hearted Duke of Hawthorne, had just asked the invisible girl in the borrowed dress to dance, and the fortress of London society shuddered on its foundations. The moment Maximilian's hand settled on her waist, the ballroom ceased to exist. It shrank to the 2-foot space between them, a vortex of his scent, sandalwood, old leather, and the crisp night air. He was an impeccably skilled dancer, guiding her with a confidence so absolute that she, who had only ever practiced with a broomstick in the attic, found her feet moving in perfect time. She kept her gaze fixed on the stark white of his cravat, afraid to meet those slate-grey eyes. The silence between them was louder than the music. She could feel the concentrated malice of hundreds of eyes, and she knew that just beyond her line of sight, Cordelia Vane was watching, her face likely a terrifying shade of puce. "You are trembling," Maximilian observed. It was not a question. "You have caused a significant scandal, Your Grace," Rosalind replied, her voice barely a whisper. A low, surprising rumble vibrated in his chest. It was a humorless laugh. I have caused the scandal? I believe it is you, Miss Ashford. Rosalind Ashford. Miss Ashford, you are the one who has accomplished the impossible." "And what is that?" she dared, finally lifting her gaze to his. The scar, she noted, was not grotesque. It was simply a part of the landscape of his face, like a riverbed etched into stone. "You have made the Duchess of Richmond's ball interesting," he said. His eyes were intense, analytical, as if he were trying to solve a puzzle. "You are not from one of the families. Your name is not on any list. You are here as a servant, yet you are not servile. You look at these people as if they are specimens in a jar." Rosalind felt a flush of heat. "I do no such thing. I am here to do a job, to stand behind a fern, to be available for my mistress's needs. And yet, here you are in my arms. This does not seem to fall within your duties. You did not give me a choice, Your Grace. To refuse you would have been a catastrophe for Lady Vane. I chose the lesser of 2 ruins." His expression hardened, almost imperceptibly. "The lesser of 2 ruins. You are refreshingly, or perhaps foolishly, honest." Most women in this room would sell their grandmothers for this ruin. Then I am not most women in this room, she retorted, a flash of her true spirit breaking through the fear. I am not for sale, and I have no grandmother to offer. His grip on her waist tightened, pulling her fractionally closer. He was no longer bored. He was intrigued. No, you are not. Tell me, Miss Ashford, what does a companion really do? I read aloud, Your Grace. I mend lace. I absorb the ill tempers of those who have everything and appreciate nothing. I provide a convenient object for scorn, so that they need not turn it upon one another. The words were out before she could stop them, bitter and true. She winced, expecting an immediate cold rebuke. Instead, his gaze intensified. You paint a bleak picture? It is a bleak life. But it is a life. One that you have likely just ended, Your Grace. I do hope the dance was worth my livelihood. Maximilian stopped dancing. The music was still playing, but they stood motionless in the center of the floor. The other couples gave them a wide, scandalized berth. You believe I am frivolous, he said, his voice dangerously soft. That I summoned you as a whim, a plaything to disrupt an evening. I believe you are a duke, Your Grace, she said, lifting her chin. And dukes are not accustomed to considering the consequences of their actions on people like me. We are the ferns. You are the gardener. You can move us or uproot us as you please. For a long, charged moment, he stared at her. She saw something flash in his eyes, not anger, but a flicker of respect, and something else, something dark and lonely. I am no gardener, Miss Ashford, but I am not a vandal either. The music swelled to its finale and ended. The dance was over. A polite, scattered applause filled the room, but the sound was drowned by the furious, frantic buzzing of whispers. He did not release her immediately. Stay here, he commanded. Do not move. He bowed, a stiff, formal gesture, and turned. He walked not back to his alcove, but directly toward Lady Vane and Cordelia, who were standing near the lemonade table, their expressions murderous. Rosalind stood frozen, her blood pounding. She could not hear his words, but she saw his posture. He was tall, imposing, radiating an aura of absolute, unassailable power. He spoke to Lady Vane, his voice low. Lady Vane, who terrorized her entire household, visibly shrank. She nodded, her face pale with a mixture of terror and fury. He then glanced at Cordelia, a look so cold and dismissive that Cordelia flinched as if struck. He turned and walked back to Rosalind. He offered her his arm. Your presence is required, Miss Ashford, he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Where are we going? You named your price for this dance, did you not? Your livelihood. I am a man who pays his debts. I am going to see to your employment. He was leading her off the dance floor, toward the exit. This was worse. He wasn't just dancing with her, he was leaving with her. The scandal was no longer a ripple, it was a tidal wave. Your Grace, I cannot, she hissed, trying to pull her hand from his arm. People are watching. My aunt, Lady Vane. She will lock me out. She will not, he said, not breaking stride. She is currently more terrified of me than she is angry at you. That is the utility of a reputation like mine. He pushed open the tall doors to a small, private anteroom, a library reserved for the Duchess's closest confidantes. It was empty, lit only by a single lamp. The noise of the ball was instantly muffled. He released her arm and turned to face her. You are correct. Your position with Lady Vane is untenable. You insulted her daughter by dancing with me, and I insulted her by acknowledging you. You cannot go back. Then you have ruined me, she cried, the terror of her situation finally breaking through. I have nowhere to go. I will be on the street." "That," he said, "is where you are wrong." He walked to the desk, picked up a letter opener, and studied it, his back to her. "I have a sister, Lady Beatrice Thorne. She is unwell. She suffers from a nervous affliction. She lives at my home in Grosvenor Square. She requires a companion." Rosalind stared at his broad back. A companion. The last one, a rather formidable woman from Bath, resigned after a week. She said the house was too quiet and my sister too melancholy. She requires someone who is not easily intimidated. Someone who speaks the truth, however inconvenient. He turned. Someone who can absorb ill tempers and provide a shield. Your words. Rosalind was stunned. You are offering me a position? I am offering you a salary, £500 per annum, considerably more than Lady Vane pays you, I imagine. £500. It was a fortune. It was more than a governess made in a decade. It was enough to be independent. The offer was a lifeline, or a trap. Why? She asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. Why me? A girl you met 5 minutes ago? A girl who insulted you? You didn't insult me, he said, stepping closer. You interested me, and you are, I suspect, indestructible. My sister needs that. I need that. In my house. People will talk, she whispered, thinking of the implications. A young, unmarried woman living in the house of the Iron Duke. Let them, he said, his voice a low growl. They talk anyway. They say I murdered my wife. What is one more rumor of a companion in my house? It will pale in comparison. He was looking at her, his gaze unwavering, and she realized he was not just offering her a job. He was offering her armor. He was using his own dark reputation as a shield for her. My things. I must retrieve my things from Lady Vane's. I will send a footman. They will be collected and delivered to Grosvenor Square by morning. You will not return to that house. He was deciding her entire life in the span of a single waltz. It was terrifying. It was arrogant. It was also, she realized, her only escape. She had called him a vandal, an uprooter. And he was. He had just uprooted her from the toxic, choking weeds of the Vane household. Do you accept, Miss Ashford? She looked at this formidable, dangerous, and strangely compelling man. She had no choice. She had been ruined, yes, but she was being given a chance to be rebuilt. Yes, Your Grace, she said, her voice clear and steady for the first time. I accept. Before Rosalind could process the sudden tectonic shift in her life, the door to the library burst open. Lady Vane and Cordelia stood framed in the doorway, their faces contorted with rage. Lady Vane's was pale and trembling, but Cordelia's was flushed a deep, blotchy red. There you are, Cordelia shrieked, her voice cracking the quiet room. You wretched, conniving little thief! Rosalind flinched, instinctively stepping back. The Duke, however, did not move. He simply turned his head, his expression one of utter, bored contempt. Lady Cordelia, he said, his voice a blade of ice, you are interrupting a private conversation, and your voice is alarming the Duchess's spaniels. I will not be silent. Cordelia marched into the room, Lady Vane fluttering nervously behind her. She is a servant, my servant, and she is a thief. Cordelia pointed a finger, trembling with malice, at Rosalind's gown. That dress, that is my dress, a cast-off I gave to the maids for rags 2 seasons ago. She stole it. She dressed herself in my rags and tried to pass herself off as a lady. The accusation hung in the air, sharp and foul. This was the ultimate humiliation. In front of the Duke, in front of the world. Lady Vane, seeing her opening, chimed in. Your Grace, you must forgive this appalling creature. She is an orphan, you see, A stray we took in. She is clearly unbalanced. We will have her seen to. Removed. Rosalind stood mortified, the blood draining from her face. The beautiful blue dress, Bessie's precious gift, now felt like a costume of shame. She wanted to disappear, to dissolve into the floor. She opened her mouth, but no words came. What could she say? It was a borrowed dress. But the Duke spoke first. His voice was no longer bored. It was low, resonant, and vibrating with a tightly controlled fury that was far more terrifying than Cordelia's screeching. "Lady Vane," he said, taking a slow step forward. Lady Vane took an involuntary step back. Let me be entirely clear. Miss Ashford did not misrepresent herself. She told me precisely who she was. I, in turn, found her to be the only person in this entire ballroom worth a moment of my time. He turned his gaze to Cordelia. You claim this gown is yours. A cast-off. It is revealing that your cast-offs possess more taste and elegance than the apricot monstrosity you are currently wearing. Cordelia gasped, her hands flying to her dress. As for her theft, the Duke continued, his voice dropping further, you are mistaken. The gown is no longer yours to claim, as Miss Ashford is no longer your servant to abuse. What? Lady Vane whispered. Miss Ashford has just accepted a position in my household as companion to my sister, Lady Beatrice. She will be residing in my home. She will be under my protection. He let that phrase hang in the air, heavy with unspoken threat. Her salary, he added, with a cruel, deliberate precision, is £500 per annum. I trust you will have her remaining possessions, unstolen, of course, sent to my residence in Grosvenor Square by 9 tomorrow morning. The colour drained from Lady Vane's face. £500. It was a sum that declared Rosalind was not a servant, but a gentlewoman of stature. It was a sum that elevated her, instantly and publicly, far above their petty insults. They had been outmanoeuvred, not just socially, but financially. Cordelia, however, was blinded by her rage. You can't. She's a nobody. You're taking her in? As your... She couldn't bring herself to say the word mistress, but her implication was clear. Maximilian took one more step, towering over her. Be very, very careful, Lady Cordelia. I have bankrupted men for less than an implication. Your family's credit, I believe, is with Drummond's Bank, as is mine. I would hate for there to be any unpleasantness with your father's accounts. This was the Iron Duke, the man who controlled markets, who crushed rivals. Lady Vane understood the threat perfectly. She grabbed Cordelia's arm, her fingers digging in like talons. Cordelia, that is enough, she hissed, her eyes wide with real fear. We are leaving, Your Grace. She attempted a curtsy, a jerky, panicked bob. We congratulate Miss Ashford on her new position. Come, Cordelia. Now. She physically dragged her daughter from the room. Cordelia's last look at Rosalind was one of pure, venomous hatred. The door clicked shut. Silence descended, thick and heavy. Rosalind was shaking. She sank into a nearby chair, her legs giving way. That was unpleasant, the Duke finished, but necessary. You cannot show weakness to predators, Miss Ashford. They mistake it for an invitation. You threatened them. I stated a fact, he corrected her, his tone devoid of emotion. They are vipers. I merely showed them a boot. He looked at her, truly looked at her, and his harsh expression softened, just for a moment. She looked small in the chair, the fight gone out of her, the borrowed blue dress now seeming to overwhelm her. You are safe from them, he said. They will not bother you again. They fear me more than they hate you. They will talk, she whispered, her head in her hands. The entire ton will be talking by morning. The Duke and the companion. I've what? He prompted. You've tied my reputation to yours. And yours, Your Grace, your reputation is dark. It is, he agreed without apology. It is a convenient shadow. You will find it useful. In my shadow, no one will dare accost you. He crossed the room and pulled the bell rope. I am having my carriage brought around. It will take you to Grosvenor Square. I will remain here. It will be less conspicuous. Less conspicuous? She asked, a hysterical little laugh bubbling in her throat. I think we are far past that. For you, not for me. I am accustomed to being a pariah. You are not. A footman appeared. Your Grace? My carriage. For Miss Ashford. She is to be taken to Hawthorne House and given to the care of Mrs. Grimshaw. She is to be prepared a room in the east wing, near my sister. Very good, Your Grace. The footman, professional to a fault, did not even blink. The Duke turned back to Rosalind. He offered his hand, not to dance, but to help her stand. She took it. His hand was large, and it enveloped hers completely. Go with my man, Miss Ashford. I will see you tomorrow. Your Grace, she said, finding her footing. Thank you. Not just for the position, but for what you said. To them. I dislike bullies, Miss Ashford, and I dislike liars. His gaze held hers. I will see you tomorrow. Try to get some sleep. Mrs. Grimshaw is formidable. You will need your strength. He released her hand, and she was ushered out a side door, avoiding the ballroom entirely. As she stepped into the cool night air and was handed into the most magnificent carriage she had ever seen, emblazoned with the ducal crest of a hawk and a thorn, she felt a profound sense of dislocation. Hours ago, she had been a servant, preparing to sit with her spiteful aunt. Now, she was the most notorious woman in London, speeding toward a new life in a gilded cage, employed by a man who wielded his own darkness like a shield. She didn't know if she had been saved or captured. Hawthorne House was not a home. It was a monument. A vast, imposing edifice of pale Portland stone, it consumed one entire side of Grosvenor Square. Its windows were dark, its silence profound. When the carriage, drawn by 4 perfectly matched black horses, rolled to a stop, Rosalind felt as though she were being delivered to a beautiful, silent prison. The door was opened by a butler who looked as old and immovable as the house itself. Miss Ashford, he intoned, his voice a dry rustle. His Grace sent word. I am Ames. Please come this way. Mrs. Grimshaw is waiting. Mrs. Grimshaw was, as the Duke had warned, formidable. She was a tall, skeletal woman dressed in black bombazine that seemed to rustle with disapproval. She was waiting at the top of the grand staircase, a marble expanse that could have hosted a ball all on its own. So you are the one, Mrs. Grimshaw said. Her voice was cold, her eyes the colour of chilled steel. His Grace's new companion. The pause she left before the last word was thick with insinuation. I am Lady Beatrice's new companion, yes, Rosalind said, lifting her chin. She would not be intimidated, not after facing down Lady Vane. We shall see, Mrs. Grimshaw sniffed. His Grace is impulsive. The last one, Miss Potter, left in tears. Lady Beatrice is not easy. I am not Miss Potter. A flicker of something, surprise, respect, passed over the housekeeper's face. No, I suppose you are not. Follow me. Your room is prepared. Lady Beatrice is already asleep. You will meet her in the morning. Rosalind was led through endless corridors of polished floors, past portraits of stern-faced Thorne ancestors. The house was immaculate, opulent, and utterly joyless. It was also cold, despite the season. Her room was larger than the Vanes' entire drawing room. It was furnished with a heavy mahogany four-poster bed, a fireplace, and a small sitting area. Her meagre possessions, delivered from Montague Place, were already there, sitting in her one small, battered trunk at the foot of the bed. They looked pathetic in the grand space. That night, Rosalind did not sleep. She lay in the enormous bed, listening to the unfamiliar silence of the great house, a silence broken only by the distant chime of a long-case clock. She met Lady Beatrice the next morning. A maid brought her a simple, elegant morning dress of grey wool. A note from Mrs. Grimshaw said it was, "From the late Duchess's stores, as your own wardrobe is insufficient." Another humiliation, but a practical one. Beatrice's rooms were in the same wing. Rosalind knocked and entered. The girl sitting in the window seat was tiny, a pale, ethereal creature with enormous blue eyes and hands that twisted restlessly in her lap. She looked about 17. "Lady Beatrice?" The girl jumped, a small, frightened sound escaping her. "Oh, you are Miss Ashford." "I am, but you can call me Rosalind." Rosalind smiled, keeping her voice soft. "I'm to be your companion." "They all leave," Beatrice whispered, looking out the window. "They don't like me, or they are afraid of Max or the house. This house, it whispers." Rosalind came further into the room. "I am not afraid of your brother, Lady Beatrice, and I am not afraid of houses." "What does it whisper?" Beatrice looked at her, her gaze sharp and intelligent, belying her nervous manner. "It whispers about Isabella, his wife. She died here. No, that's not right. She died at Hawthorne's End, in the country. But her ghost is here. Mrs. Grimshaw says so." "Mrs. Grimshaw seems to say a great many things," Rosalind said, sitting in the chair opposite. "I wouldn't put much stock in it. What do you like to do?" "Read," Beatrice said instantly. "And walk. But Max doesn't like me to walk in the park alone. He says, people stare." "Then we shall walk together," Rosalind declared, "and let them stare." The first few days fell into a strange routine. Rosalind spent her mornings with Beatrice. They read poetry, and Rosalind discovered the girl had a keen, insightful mind, trapped behind a wall of shyness. In the afternoons they walked in Hyde Park, Beatrice clinging to Rosalind's arm, but her head held a little higher each day. Of the Duke, she saw almost nothing. He kept to his study, a wing of the house she was not invited to. He was a phantom presence, a heavy tread in the hall late at night, a set of riding boots in the foyer. But she felt his observance. Sometimes, reading to Beatrice in the library, she would feel the hair on her neck stand on end, and she would look up to see him standing in the doorway, watching them, his face unreadable, before he turned and disappeared. The staff, following Mrs. Grimshaw's lead, treated her with a cold, suspicious courtesy. She was an interloper, the subject of the city's most lurid gossip. She was the companion in blue, the Duke's shadow. A week after her arrival, she was arranging flowers in the morning room when a new voice startled her. "Well, well, you must be the little sparrow the cat dragged in." She turned. A man was leaning against the doorframe, impeccably dressed, handsome in a blonde, classical way, with a smile that was all charm and no warmth. "I beg your pardon? Miss Ashford, I presume. I am Lord Julian Hargrave, a friend of the family. I let myself in. Ames is used to me." He sauntered into the room, circling her. "I must say, you are not what I expected. The Tun paints you as some sort of siren, a new Cleopatra. You are rather plain. And you, Lord Hargrave, are rather rude," Rosalind countered, turning back to her flowers. He laughed, a bright, brittle sound. I am. It's my primary charm. I've been dying to meet you. You have done the impossible. You have made Max do something. He has been a walking corpse since Isabella's death. And now this, hiring a companion from a ballroom floor. It's wonderfully dramatic. I am here for Lady Beatrice, Lord Hargrave. Of course you are, he said, his voice dropping to a confidential murmur. He leaned closer. A word of advice, from a true friend. Be careful. This house, it has a habit of crushing delicate things. I am not delicate, my lord. No. We shall see. His eyes raked over her, appraising and unsettling. But Hawthorne is. He is a man of violent passions, kept under iron control. It's what happened to Isabella, you know. He loved her too much, too darkly. He smothered her. She couldn't breathe. Rosalind stepped away from him. You are speaking of your friend's late wife. I am speaking the truth. Ask anyone. He is a man who breaks what he professes to love. I just wouldn't want to see you broken, Miss Ashford. Lord Hargrave. A new voice cut through the air, cold as a winter wind. The Duke stood in the doorway. He was in his riding clothes, his boots muddy, a crop in his hand. He looked at Lord Hargrave, and his face was a mask of thunder. Julian, I was not aware I was expecting you. Max, just dropping by. I was introducing myself to the lovely Miss Ashford, giving her the lay of the land. I am capable of furnishing my own staff with the lay of the land, as you put it, the Duke said, his voice lethal. I trust you were not bothering her. Never, Julian smiled, all teeth. Just a friendly welcome. But I see you are busy. I shall call again. Ladies. He bowed to Rosalind, a gesture that felt mocking. A pleasure, Miss Ashford. A true, rare pleasure. He brushed past the Duke and was gone. Rosalind was left with Maximilian, the air in the room crackling with his unspent anger. You will stay away from Lord Hargrave, he said. It was not a request. He is your friend, Rosalind pointed out. He is a necessary acquaintance. He is a vulture. He is drawn to scandal, and you, Miss Ashford, are the scandal of the moment. Do not speak to him. You do not command me, Your Grace, she said, her temper flaring. You employ me. There is a difference. He stepped toward her, his height and his anger dominating the room. He slapped the riding crop against his boot, the sound like a gunshot. In this, I command you. He is dangerous. He is poison. Do you understand me? I understand that you are surrounded by darkness, Your Grace, she retorted. You, this house, your friends. I am beginning to wonder if there is any light in it at all. His face, which had been dark with anger, suddenly crumpled. The fury vanished, replaced by a profound, raw grief that shocked her into silence. He looked lost. There was, he whispered, so quietly she almost didn't hear him. But it went out. He turned on his heel and strode from the room, leaving Rosalind alone, her heart pounding, suddenly afraid not of his anger, but of his pain. What had happened in this house? What had happened to Isabella? And why did Lord Hargrave's warning, he breaks what he professes to love, echo in her mind with the chilling ring of truth? The Duke's outburst and his subsequent retreat changed the atmosphere in Hawthorne House. He became even more remote, a passing shadow in the halls, but Rosalind felt his presence everywhere. His edict about Lord Hargrave hung between them, an unanswered, unspoken tension. Rosalind, in turn, threw herself into her work with Beatrice. The girl was blossoming under her care. She had a dry wit that, once unearthed, was sharp and delightful. They began taking the carriage to a circulating library in Mayfair, and even visited Hatchard's on Piccadilly, where Rosalind encouraged Beatrice to choose her own books. "Max won't like the expense," Beatrice fretted, holding a copy of Jane Eyre. "His Grace can afford a novel, Beatrice, and if he cannot, I will buy it for you. It's time you read something other than sermons." Their bond strengthened, becoming a small, warm pocket of life in the cold, cavernous house. But the ghost of Isabella was always present. Mrs. Grimshaw, in particular, seemed to guard the late Duchess's memory with a dragon-like ferocity. The entire West Wing, where Isabella's apartments had been, was kept locked. "His Grace's orders," Mrs. Grimshaw had stated flatly when Rosalind inquired. "No one is to enter." Out of respect. One rainy afternoon, Rosalind and Beatrice were exploring the upper floors. They found a small, forgotten sitting room, filled with dusty furniture, shrouded in holland covers. "This was her favourite room," Beatrice whispered, touching the cover of a chaise lounge. "Isabella's. She used to come up here to read. She said the light was better." How did she die, Beatrice?" Rosalind asked gently. "I know it was a fall, but—" Beatrice's face grew pale, her nervous habit returning. "They were at Hawthorne's End, our country estate. Max was... he was in one of his moods. He'd been in London for a week, and he'd just returned. They were arguing. I heard them. From my room. He was shouting. He gets so loud." She was trembling. He said she was suffocating him, and she said he was a block of ice. Then he stormed out to the stables. He rode for hours. When he came back, she was on the flagstones, under the balcony. Mrs. Grimshaw found her. "Oh, Beatrice," Rosalind whispered, taking her hand. "He never forgave himself," Beatrice said, her eyes filling with tears. "He thinks his words, his anger, drove her to it. He thinks he pushed her, not with his hands, but with his coldness. That's what Lord Hargrave said, at the funeral, that Max's heart was the weapon." "Lord Hargrave said that?" Rosalind felt a chill. He was Isabella's dearest friend. He was devoted to her. He was the only one who could make her laugh. He was devastated. He's been so good to Max, helping him manage, even though he blames him. A cold, sick feeling was coalescing in Rosalind's stomach. "Beatrice, did Isabella seem unhappy to you before she died?" "She was always sad," Beatrice mused, "but also frightened, jumpy, like a deer." "Frightened of your brother?" "I thought so, but now I don't know." Beatrice moved to a small, ornate secretary desk in the corner. She kept her private things in here. She pulled the handle of a small drawer. It was locked. "We shouldn't," Rosalind said, but her voice lacked conviction. Beatrice used a hairpin from her bun, her fingers surprisingly nimble. "I used to watch her do this. She kept sweets in here." The lock clicked open. The drawer was empty, save for a single, small, leather-bound book. A diary. Beatrice's hands were shaking too much. You read it." Rosalind took the book. Her heart was hammering. This was a violation. This was unforgivable. She opened it. The entries were short, the handwriting a frantic, looping script. Most were mundane. "Saw the new silk at the Mercer's. Max is in London again. Mrs. G served carp. I detest carp." But as she flipped toward the end, the tone changed. October 10th. J.H. called again. He brought me roses. He knows Max despises him in the house. He does it to provoke. His eyes, they frighten me. They are not kind. They are hungry. Rosalind's blood ran cold. J.H. Julian Hargrave. October 14th. He said Max does not deserve me. He said he has loved me since my debut. I told him he must not speak so. I told him I am a married woman. He just smiled. He said marriage is a word. He said he would save me. Save me from what? October 20th. I'm afraid. I cannot tell Max. He will call him out. He will kill him, or be killed. J.H. follows me. I saw him in the garden last night. He was just watching the house. I feel trapped. The final entry was dated the day before her death, October 23rd. He knows. Max has returned. J.H. sent a note. He said if I will not come to him, he will liberate me himself. He says my ice-hearted husband will not have me. He is mad. Utterly mad. I am going to tell Max everything tonight. I cannot live like this. I will not be his prize. Rosalind looked up, her face pale. Beatrice, it wasn't your brother. She wasn't afraid of Max. She was afraid of him, of Lord Hargrave. What? Beatrice whispered. She was going to tell Max. That night. The night she died. The implication was horrifying. A new, terrible narrative was forming. Isabella hadn't jumped. She hadn't fallen. At that exact moment, the door of the sitting room creaked open. Such a touching scene. Reading other people's mail. Lord Julian Hargrave stood there, his charming smile firmly in place. But his eyes were not smiling. They were chips of ice. How did you get in here? Rosalind stammered, instinctively hiding the diary behind her back. This was always my favourite room, too, he said, sauntering in. Isabella and I spent many happy hours here. She had secrets. He looked at the open desk drawer. And it seems you found one. Tsk, Miss Ashford. Such curiosity. You were never her friend, Rosalind said, her voice shaking but her resolve hardening. You were tormenting her. Beatrice shrank back, hiding behind Rosalind. Hargrave's smile faltered. She was a fool, a beautiful, tragic fool. She was married to a monster, a man incapable of love. I offered her an escape. I offered her my love. She was ungrateful. She was terrified of you, Rosalind shot back. You were stalking her. Such ugly words. He took a step closer. And what precisely do you intend to do with that little book? Run to the Duke? Tell him I am the real monster. He won't believe you. He will, Rosalind said. No, Hargrave said, his voice soft and chilling. He won't. Because he is so consumed with his own guilt that he needs to be the monster. He needs to be the one who drove her to her death. It's the only passion he has left. He lunged, not at Rosalind, but at Beatrice, grabbing her arm. Give me the book, Miss Ashford, or I will snap this little bird's wrist. Beatrice screamed. Let her go! Rosalind shoved the diary at him. Take it! Just let her go! Hargrave smiled, snatching the book. He tucked it into his coat. He released Beatrice, shoving her toward the chaise. Good girl, you see? You are not so different from Isabella after all. You just need the proper motivation. He advanced on Rosalind. And I find, my dear, that your fire, it's so much more compelling than her fear. I thought I wanted a replacement for her. But you are an upgrade. Get out, Rosalind whispered, her eyes flashing. Oh, I will. For now. But our little secret, it stays in this room. If you tell Max, if you breathe a word of this, I will not come for you. I will come for her. He nodded at the weeping Beatrice. And I will finish what I started at Hawthorne's End. Do you understand me? Rosalind, trapped, could only nod, her heart sick with hatred. Excellent. He smoothed his coat, his charming mask back in place. I shall see myself out. Do give my regards to Max. Tell him. I'm thinking of him. He turned and left, his footsteps echoing down the hall. Rosalind rushed to Beatrice, holding the sobbing girl. She had the truth. But the truth was a weapon that was now aimed directly at them. The ghost of Isabella was no longer a whisper, it was a shriek, and the man who had created that ghost was still walking the halls of Hawthorne House. The following days were tense. Beatrice regressed into her fear, and rumours, fanned by a returned Cordelia Vane, branded Rosalind as the Grosvenor Leech. The Duke, seeing only his sister's decline and the escalating scandal, summoned Rosalind to his study. "This is not working," he said, his voice flat with exhaustion. Believing he was the poison in his own house, he dismissed her. "I am trying to protect you. I break everything I touch." He informed her a cottage in Wiltshire was prepared. She would leave in the morning. His words shattered Rosalind's control. "You are a blind fool," she cried, her rage erupting. She told him everything, about Isabella's diary, Hargrave's stalking, and his threats against Beatrice. "She is terrified of him, not you." As the Duke reeled from the truth, Lord Hargrave himself appeared, having manipulated Mrs. Grimshaw into letting him in. "Such theatrics, Miss Ashford," he sneered, but Maximilian, his voice lethally calm, confronted him. "Was it you? Did you kill her?" Hargrave's mask shattered. "She wouldn't have me," he confessed. "She spat on my love. She slipped. It was her own fault." Realizing he was ruined, Hargrave grabbed a letter opener from the desk and lunged at Rosalind. Maximilian moved like lightning, slamming Hargrave into the bookshelves. Fueled by 2 years of misplaced guilt, he roared, "You will not touch her!" He began to strangle Hargrave, stopping only when Rosalind screamed his name. Breathing heavily, the Duke released his grip. He turned to the door as the butler arrived. "Ames!" he commanded, his voice shaking with cold fury. "Send for the runners. Lord Hargrave has just confessed to the murder of my wife." Lord Hargrave's trial gripped London, ending in a guilty verdict. He was transported for life, finally laying Isabella's ghost to rest. While society now hailed Rosalind as an angel, the Duke vanished, retreating to Hawthorne's End to confront the past. Weeks later, he summoned Rosalind and a healing Beatrice to the country estate. Rosalind found him in the garden, no longer the Iron Duke, but a man at peace. He confessed he had faced his guilt and, thanks to her, was free. He called Rosalind his truth and his light, asking her to be his equal, his partner, and his love. Declaring they were not a monster and a damsel, but simply a man and a woman. Rosalind accepted. She kissed him, a kiss not of passion, but of peace. As they embraced, a healed Beatrice watched from the window, her happy laughter bright in the air. And so, our story ends. A borrowed gown became a suit of armor. A feared duke became a man redeemed. Rosalind Ashford didn't just crash a ball, she shattered a web of lies that had imprisoned an entire family. Theirs was not a fairy tale, but something far more real. A story of finding truth in the darkest of places, and discovering that the most powerful love isn't about titles or fortunes, but about two souls who are brave enough to face the shadows together. What was your favorite moment of Rosalind and Maximilian's journey? Let me know in the comments below. If you were moved by their story, please show your support by liking this video and sharing it with someone else who loves a story of drama and redemption. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel for more historical dramas every week. Thank you for listening.